Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Brownsville Matters. I have with me in the studio today Dendea Balli, who is going to, actually, let me just start here, Dendea. Your group, one of the reasons I wanted you to come is your group, Day Trippers, that you have been, I guess you've been head of for 10 years or so?
We've been posting this for several years, the Day Trippers page, and I am the administrator of that page. It was an idea that was born pre-COVID, and basically that was to promote Valley people to go out and go outside and enjoy nature.
Because you grew up outside.
Grew up outside, grew up along the banks of the Rio Grande River where you could ski and swim, go boating, enjoy the palm trees. It was quite a bit different back then.
You actually skied in the Rio Grande?
Absolutely. I won't say what year that was, but those listeners would know that it was open and available.
Yeah, I remember Pepe's on the River.
Absolutely.
They used to ski out there in front of Pepe's, which was a pretty wide bend in the river there.
Yes. And so you had Chimney Park where you could dock. You had the Riverside Club and you had Pepe's, and you could ski, you could swim, a lot of birds, a lot of nature. You could hike, just about do anything. There was a lot of camping in Anzalduas Park and some of these other areas that have now since been closed.
And you grew up there, close by?
Yes, in that area.
In that area?
Yes.
And how did you go? Did your mother take you over there all the time, or did you go on your own?
So
were you a free-range child?
We were a free-range child. I was a free-range. We could go anywhere as long as the sun was out in the sky.
So what was the rule? Be home when the street lights come on?
When the street lights come on, or when Mama flips the switch. You better see that. Come in and take a bath, which I protested for.
And so from early in the morning to late in the evening, you were outside?
Every day, all day, no shoes, and lots of animals we picked up, and bike riding, really enjoying picking up rocks along the river, looking at different plants, and just being outside, soaking up the sun, enjoying the breeze, never thinking anything.
So your whole life has been in the valley. You were born and raised here.
I was not born here, but I got here as fast as I could, and I have lived here all my life and really have traveled around the world and enjoy the valley.
You were in real estate.
I am a broker, yes, real estate broker.
But you started out as, I guess as many people do in real estate. You just got a real estate license and you worked for someone else, right?
Immediately, I went to get my broker's license.
Immediately?
Immediately. Yes, as fast as I could. And so the rules were a little different back then, and so I was able to get my broker's license right away.
Excellent.
So I've had that for
very
15
smart.
years. Yes.
Very smart. And how have you seen the valley change in those 15 years? I mean, I'm talking about real estate, not necessarily preservation and all that, but when people from the outside come here to buy property or land or whatever, how do you orient them to this market?
So we have such a cultural difference here in the Rio Grande Valley, the 956, as everyone likes to say.
Puro 956.
Puro 956. It's a remarkable land with many different types of cultures, food, languages. And so when people come in, they are really shocked, number one, by the pricing market. They typically find this market to be a fairly inexpensive market for homes and commercial property. We have a lot of outside interest in investing here in the valley, and we also share the ability to enjoy luxury ranches and acreage that many people across our great state do not. Our price point is still quite low. The other nice thing about the valley and real estate is that the economics tend to take a long time to get down to the very low South Valley of Brownsville and McAllen area. So it takes a while for any kind of economic issues to hit our valley. So we're quite well insulated from any of that happening. And we saw that during COVID, which was an amazing market for sellers.
Well, also it happens the other way, though. It took a long time for our property to appreciate. And
that's the flip side. Although you look at the tax rolls right now, you'll see they've very fairly appreciated, and people are not really happy with that either.
It's always a two-edged sword. You sell it, you want it to have a high valuation, but when you're living in it, you want it to be worthless.
Most definitely. Understood.
Well, when people come from up around Austin, there are like a lot of complaints. People say, "Oh, the Californication of Texas is going on," and because a lot of people are moving from the tech industry into Austin. Do we have that same thing happening here? Of course, SpaceX has a bit of that. But what do you see? Where are they coming from? When they're coming from other states?
They're coming from California.
California, okay.
And COVID brought out a lot of high portfolio Californians, and they would buy property sight unseen.
Oh.
And what is happening now?
A house or just land?
Residential portfolios,
okay.
Land and homes, but primarily homes. And what we're seeing right now in this market across Brownsville to the Upper Valley is a difference in availability. Before, we would have a few homes to see. We also had a shortage of rentals. Now we are maxed out with rental properties, and you still see building construction and not enough tenants and buyers. It's a little concerning.
What do you think of some of the talk going on in Congress about making it illegal for corporations to own homes or to own more than two or three? A lot of them don't like the idea of corporations owning, 40% of the residential portfolio and driving up prices. Well, keeping first-time home buyers out of the market essentially is the complaint, I think.
I think it is definitely something that needs to be looked at because every American deserves to have a home, and with our economy, it needs to be available at a price that they can afford. And with our recent economy, we've seen, interest rates bottoming out. You could basically have a free mortgage to now where people are complaining. But typically, if you look since 1975, those rates have kind of fluctuated between 8 and 8.5%. So this rate that we're at 6.5 to 7% is actually fine. It's just most of the people that are entering the buying market now are younger and they've never seen these types of rates. But when the rates are low, economy is not good. So we need to keep those rates up. So I do think that the government needs to look at allowing people and putting some reserves on that.
Well, the thing I find interesting about the market for younger people is that a very basic mortgage with tax and insurance and everything is a couple of $1,000 a month, and if you're on minimum wage, you're going to need about 4 people on minimum wage to be able to make that, and still have food. So it's a tough time.
It's a tough time, and what's really interesting about the Valley is you look at rental rates; they're comparable to Houston and Austin.
I know, yeah.
And you look at our labor and our cost of living, but you look at salaries, and they do not correlate.
They do not.
So you look at the building that's going on, and you see brand new construction, and then you look at the price tag for someone to have a mortgage or to even rent. And those rent rolls have started going up. Now, in the past, we've had really lower rent rolls, but we've also had, housing that was insufficient, I would say. So we're trying to work on having investors look at improving those properties, bringing them up to standards so people can have a better roof over their head, but at the same time, not max out. But we are seeing new construction maxing out. And you're right, even here in the Valley, it's not affordable to be renting versus purchasing.
And then this is bizarre, people who have rented for 10 years at, $900, $1,200 a month, which will make a payment in some cases. They don't qualify for a house, even though they've been making that payment, for years. And yet they don't have the financial clarity to qualify for just a basic home. It's very discouraging to young people, I think.
It is, and I think that we've done them a disservice by not mentoring them on the financial aspect.
That's true.
A lot of people here in the Valley just a lot of people all over tend to not trust banks. Yeah. And so we've never passed that down. It's not taught anywhere. And we're not mentoring our youth to say how important. In fact, we're doing the opposite. We're putting credit cards in their hands and things that are really going to put them at risk. And that we've seen that. And so it is difficult.
I think it should be a required course in college and high school, personal finance, I guess you might call it financial literacy.
That's great. That's
Be a great
very much
idea.
needed.
Very much needed. One of the expressions used here in the Valley for the past 30 years, I hear people say it, developers and farmers also, is that they say the farmers have quit growing crops and they're now growing houses. And so a lot of the farmland has become housing. It used to be that we had, I think, something like 3 million acres of citrus in the 60s. And now we're about a third of that, maybe, you know. And a lot of those orchards are now residential districts. So one of the things that attracted people to the Valley is the greenbelt, that it's a place with wild birds and beautiful wildlife and natural habitat. So how do we have both worlds?
One of the things we have to do is get involved with our community.
Mm-hmm.
Austin does a really great job of preserving the natural habitat and landscape. Mm-hmm. The Valley does not do such a great job. So I would encourage individuals to talk to their city, their municipalities, and the county, and ask for green efforts, ask for beautification projects. There's, for example, in Brownsville, there's a big love and interest in the Resakas, preserving those the waterways and the lands, the native species, the plants and the trees. Once these things are gone and are removed and then gone, they're no longer able to return to that habitat. When we have so much concrete, it's becoming hotter and hotter in our valley. So although I am in real estate and that is the catalyst for my ability to do what I need to do financially, it's really important that I keep in perspective about the preservation and teach people. We work with builders to let them know if you're going to take these orange groves, they've been here 40, 50, 60 years. That was the drive in the 30s when they came down with the Delta Orchards in Raymondville, and they really started all of this in Mission area and down into the lower valley. When all of that's removed, like you say, it's being replaced with concrete, but they're not putting in green areas. They're not putting in trees. So if every family would plant trees and shrubs and native species, there's a lot to be said for that, for migration of butterflies, migration of birds. And this is where we need to band together and have more preservation of our soil and our native species. And it's done individually just by working together as a community in your neighborhood and encouraging these developers to follow these standards, but asking the city to up the ante and have these programs and incentives for these developers.
Well, what is a good example of developers preserving, green spaces? How do they do it in the development of a big project?
When they're mapping out their space, looking at areas where they can accommodate the trees. We don't have a lot of trees, but what we do have, we need to preserve those. So working with a designer, working with an architect to preserve a lane or preserve the trees, preserve the shrubs.
But that's expensive because now they have to say, okay, I'm developing this 100 acres, and what you're wanting me to do is to give up 10 for a green space, and that's money I could be making off of development.
So what the city does is give them some incentives to do so, and doing so helping them with their projects. That's the only way to do that is when they're purchasing the land, roll that into a package so that it helps them be able to accommodate. And we're not talking about a whole lot of space, but certainly that would be beneficial, especially when a developer is having to pay hundreds and thousands of dollars for retention ponds that the city requires, but yet they're allowed to bulldoze everything in sight down. So you do have to work with them on giving incentives and helping them, maybe making the land more affordable. If they're purchasing the property through the seller, you can give some incentives through that.
Do you have an example where it's been done well in the Valley, where there's a project where you say, that's the way, that's a good model?
Specifically, I've seen some of the out-of-town hotels have developed around some like areas where they've preserved not so much the orange groves, but some of the mesquite trees.
Right.
You'll see some of the older trees that they've preserved. I would say that more of the corporate facilities are able to do that. They have a plan for that, rather than the local builders tend to not keep it in mind. And if the cities are not enforcing it and it's not part of the necessity of their development package, it's not being looked into.
Well, money drives everything, and some people just say, well, I don't want to give up, these 3 acres to achieve this. I'll let somebody else do that. I'll let the hotels do that. But you're right. If people can see an aesthetic return, that because it is beautiful, it attracts more people, more funding, more money, et cetera. So there's potential there. I mean, a lot of people are attracted to the beautiful cities of America because they are green. And they want to retire and go live there because it's beautiful. And so somewhere along the line, somebody was thinking of preservation.
It's not just on the developers. These developers could also implement growing packages. For example, every home will have X number of trees, and it's mandated that they have those trees. Some developers are doing that, but they're not putting native. They're putting things that are going to die within 6 months the person comes in. So they're really selling the homeowner short by not choosing the right plants and trees. And that's something I think that can be done very inexpensively and very easy if they were educated on that. And then when they purchase that brand new home, it's already set up for them for success rather than failure.
Here's an example. I knew someone a few years ago, a developer who took some orange groves and built homes but left a little natural fence of trees, like maybe 20 trees in a natural fence line that kind of went along the boundaries of the property. And so the effort was, let me preserve these orange trees, and then the people can have the orange trees. And it didn't work out so well because the people took them out. Or they ignored them and the vines grew up in them and choked them. And so you're right. That's why the native is better. It doesn't require a lot of maintenance the way an orange grove would require, right?
Correct. And since COVID, we've seen a lot of the older arts coming back in. Gardening is one of them. Knitting was another one, but I'll go with gardening. So gardening, landscaping, those types of things.
Did you take up knitting?
I tried crocheting once, but I pass.
Quilting?
Quilting I'll do.
Okay.
Outside is my thing. I don't like to be inside.
So
I don't
gardening.
like to be seated.
You do gardening.
Anything outside. So what happens with these types of arts that are lost, finding someone to know about plants is becoming more and more difficult. But if you look at UTRGV, who's doing an excellent job with their farming program, their horticulture program, here in the Lower Valley as well as Upper, they're really concentrating on native species, planting the cypress trees, getting those back up to the Upper Valley. You've got some beautiful ones down here in Brownsville.
Yeah, here on the UTRGV campus, the Brownsville campus, they have some butterfly gardens and a lot of the medicinal sorts of herbs.
Absolutely.
It's very cool that they're doing that.
So that's something I think that's easy to do when you have a developer looking at these things. It's coming back to that where our land and our food sources are becoming scarce. So those kinds of things are happening in the urban areas and small plots, but we need to be looking at that for sustainability. That seems to be a word that people are really looking at in every aspect of business these days.
We do have a lot of wildlife preserves, refuges here in the valley. And those are our jewels, Sable Palms, for instance, Santana Wildlife Refuge, Atascosa. And your group, the Day Trippers, I think has done a great job of highlighting in social media these jewels that we have available to us for, weekend hikes and an outdoor life. And what I want to ask you is, what do you know of in the valley that everybody should see, or that a lot of people are unaware of? It's kind of interesting. We live, despite all the things you and I have just talked about, there are some incredibly beautiful elements here, and a lot of people don't know. So what should everybody see, or what are the hidden treasures?
So there are so many hidden treasures. There's just so many, especially if you're looking across the valley. I mean, you start with a Civil War trail. Nobody really knows about that, off of Military, all the way from Brownsville to the Upper Valley. Then you have the Oblate Trail. That's another trail that really people don't know about. You have old cemeteries. But one of the neatest things, I think, in Brownsville is the cypress plantation. That Montezuma cypress, that is majestic. I know there's been a lot of preservation over the last several years. And replanting. And we're even bringing things to Weslaco and the Upper Valley. But Monte is a 900-year-old cypress in Mission And everybody should see that. It's a little challenging to see that because of where the tree is located, but it is an unbelievable sight.
Where is it? I haven't seen it.
That
Where
is on the levee in Mission.
It's on the levee?
It's on the levee. And you remember that these trees grew where the river used to be.
Used to be.
And they used to be, if you can close your eyes for a moment and think about, this was all cypress, Montezuma cypress forest. Huge trees, beautiful. There are some pictures you can find in archives that are gorgeous, and Brownsville does have the location of that plantation where you can kind of take a step back into history and see this. But this tree in Mission is located right along the levee, because remember, the levee was non-existent before, and they have left that tree intact. They say that it's over 900 years old, and they call him Monty.
Monty.
It's his nickname for Montezuma. So that is something kind of unique. You do have to get permission from Border Patrol now to see Monty, and you definitely want to make sure that you get permission, because they will ask you what you're doing. But you can take pictures with the tree. You can look at the tree.
Well, you have a Facebook page for
Yes.
the day trippers, right? So
Correct.
do you have a picture of Monty out there?
We do. And
Yeah.
from time to time, what we try to do, so we really focused initially when we started this on outdoor activities. Right. And typically around the holidays, we pick it up with lots of musicals and cultural art. We really want people to go out and see. And so we've kind of now expanded into focusing on cultural things. Like if you're having a loteria or a run, we're not necessarily focusing on those, but we do focus on our cultural arts for children, for anybody that wants to learn about orchestra, any kind of musical groups. We post that so that people see there are a lot of things to do, but we really look for exceptional things and neat things. We do post pictures from time to time of certain plants. If we see something that's extraordinary, a unique tree or a huge tree, which is not common in the valley, we try to travel around and take photos of roadside things, and we encourage day trips. Just get out and drive and see and feel, because there is so much to do.
I remember you did a trip out to the Salt Lake up north, and that was very interesting because a lot of people don't know the history of that particular site, and it used to be private, right? And now it is public.
Now it's public, and it's public land. It was private, and
what is the name of it as an official name?
El Sal del Rey.
El Sal del Rey, okay.
And you can take hikes, and when you go out there, it's just, again, like acres of diamonds. You are looking at it, and because of the salt, it looks like you're seeing diamonds. And as you get closer, you will see. It's very interesting because there's insects that are in the salt that are preserved, and there's wood. You can go out into the salt.
How many acres is the lake, so to speak?
The preserve, I don't recall exactly, but it covers quite a bit of miles actually out there, and it's not just one parcel. There's 3 lakes out there, and one of them is fairly close. It's a smaller piece, but then the larger ones are more to the northeast area, and it's a really nice day trip. You can also see a lot of javelinas in that area. You can take your animals, but you definitely want to make sure to wear, sunblock, take good foot protection, those sort of things, because those are nice hikes. Those are some of the hidden jewels. There's also Chihuahua Forest. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I've not heard of that.
In Mission, that's West Mission, and there's a lot of horned toads in that area, a lot of nesting tortoise.
Horny toads.
Horny toads, yeah.
That's what we call them as kids.
We did too,
horny
but
toads.
I'm told they're called horned toads.
Horned frogs is another name for them, horned frogs.
Yeah.
That's what TCU. TCU.
Yes.
Their mascot is a horned frog.
That's right.
So there was a lot of different names for horny toad, horned frogs, horned toads. A lot of different ones. And some people just toads.
Used to be very abundant, and we would catch them. But those are the animals or the native species that you see that you don't see as much here. So we look for things that are unique. We post them. We want to encourage people to post their pictures there. So like I said, we've expanded. Sometimes we just promote exactly what's happening this week, so you'll see the whole lineup. But if it's a special featured place, we don't run it all the time because, it's Facebook. It's not like you can catalog everything. But we do come back to those things, and we do throw in a lot of pictures.
Do you do it just on Facebook, or do you have Instagram? Well, a lot of stuff is kind of automatically carried on Instagram if you have a page there, I think. Right?
Only on Facebook.
Only
right
on
now
Facebook
for that
okay.
particular one.
So are you going to go TikTok? You're going to get with the program?
We've done some TikTok on it in the past.
Have you?
We actually have done some TikTok, yes. I have quite a few things that I'm responsible for, but I really want to focus a lot more on bringing that out with TikTok. That's a great suggestion.
Well, you have your real estate empire that you're running, and then you have day trippers, and then on top of that, you have your concern for animals, right?
That's right. So
As if you didn't have enough. Now you want, but this is really your biggest passion, right?
Yes, and I'm also an investor. So I have a lot going on all
What
the
are you
time.
investing in?
I invest in single-family homes.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Right.
and working on that. And we've also purchased a 1940 farmhouse that we preserved completely, and beautiful gardens, working on that. So again, giving back to the community in lots of ways. So my real estate business is my catalyst for financing my wealth and my growth. My passion is to be outside, but I have a voice. I want to stand in the gap for the voiceless. And so we have an organization called Pause for Help. I'm the executive director for the 501c3, and we are primarily a volunteer advocacy group. So we're not a rescue, but we do help the community connect the dots. And our primary focus is to educate, work with spay and neuter, raise funds for vaccines, and also we have a foster food pantry. We have a huge problem in our community, from the lower valley to the upper valley, with educating people on spay and neutering and also caring for their animals. It's a huge issue. Unfortunately, we have lots of animals that are running around intact, and so we want to help decrease the population. And it's really sad when you see these shelters full and these animals cannot get out. So we work on helping with transport and getting people involved in that, and that is a full-time job with lots of...
So your primary mission is to provide spay and neutering?
Our primary mission is to provide education, and we raise funds for individuals who may not have the means, because one of the problems here is we do not have enough veterinarians. You know, Cameron County is over 400,000 according to the 2021 population census, or census population, but Hidalgo County is over 800,000. So you put all those numbers together, and that's, we know those numbers are not accurate. When you look at this population, the state mandates that we have shelters in place with our counties, and that's not happening. And even when it does happen, it's a high euthanization rate rather than education. So we come in and we raise money for individuals, since there's not a lot of veterinarians. We have very few. And what is available is not affordable to our community. So we try to help people match those funds, with the surgeries. We help them with vaccines. We help them with medications. We want to get that animal healthy, and so that animal can have a good life.
And where do you get the animal healthy? In the home, in their home?
So what we do, if they're fosters, we can help you. Like if you have an individual pet and you're struggling, we work with you on the funds for that to get the surgery. And if that's your animal, well, it just stays there. But we also ask for fosters to step up, and we provide all the things that a foster would need, including food, bedding, kennels, etc. Or if you're adopting the animal, we want to make sure that that animal is altered prior to adoption.
So population control, that's one of your big deals, I assume.
Yes, and that would take, if we really had a good system, which we do not, but if we had a good working system with more veterinarians in the area, it would take 5 to 8 years to see a dent in the population. Oof. It's a tough problem.
And what's the motivation for veterinarians? I mean, they usually make money off of this procedure, so now you want them to volunteer to spay and neuter.
Not necessarily volunteer. No. Veterinarians are paid well, and they would still get paid well. The community would just have a low-cost service. So what happens right now with the 2 schools in Texas that do graduate these veterinarians is there's very few that graduate, very few.
That's true.
Less than 20, and it's the numbers are
When I was teaching at Texas A&M, years ago, it was very common that I would see students that would do kind of like pause. They would apply to get to veterinarian school, and they would be rejected, and then they would do a master's in biotechnology or something, and then try again. So a lot of people would be working on a master's to further qualify themselves to go to vet school.
Correct.
And we should have a vet school here.
Yes, we should. I'm for that, and we're ripe for that, and we need it. We have the availability. We have everything here. We're a great clinical study area. We have so many cases, and there's so many animals in need. So we could work with any of these schools. What's happening right now is there's not enough graduates, and when they do graduate, they go off to the metro areas like your Austin, San Antonio areas, and the Valley cannot compete with that as far as the offerings for a younger person.
Yeah.
So we're losing out on that, but with these types of vets that we're speaking of are not the boutique vets. So we're looking for someone who does surgical procedures, and it takes someone who's been trained, and that's why they have to be involved with another veterinarian for some time to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's a hell of a project you've taken on, but it really is vital because we have so many unwanted pets that are wandering around. When I used to live out in the country, I eventually had 15 dogs out there because people had dropped them. And I fed them and took care of them. And after a while, they were a problem because they began to fight each other like two packs. They kind of divided into two enemy camps, and
that's
it's
why
a
we
mess.
have to neuter the males.
Yeah.
It's so important. People don't understand that the surgery is, and people, I think, culturally have somewhat of a problem with that sometimes, and we need to educate them that it does control population, obviously. It controls tumors, disease, but it also controls that fighting, and they will stay at home. It's a difference in personality, so we would encourage that people to do that.
When you say you want to educate them, how do you do that?
Taking a look at statistics, looking at the options for the animal. So many times people have animals that are reproducing and then they're just dumping them.
Right.
Or the animals are diseased. They're sitting in their yard with mange or fleas and ticks. So we would like to help these people, or chained, which is against the law. And there is a ordinance on that, on chaining, and people may not be following that, but they should be. So we'd like to just introduce our services. Primarily, we're working in the Upper Valley, but this is something that is needed across our great valley here too.
Do you go into schools and educate children about this?
We're working with kids. We've worked in the libraries. We do have a volunteer program, and this is something that Paws for Help, we've been awarded several awards for community impact.
Great.
It's not a one-man show. We do have a vetted board. We actually have a veterinarian on our board. We are licensed, and we fundraise quite a bit for these types of medications, but we also have the community and the volunteers who've been inspiring and a very impactful part of this. We cannot do it without the help of many volunteers.
How do you get your funding? From individuals, or do you get it from governments? Foundations, grants, individuals mostly?
We've recently written 4 grants. I've recently written 4 grants. A college degree does help in some cases. So I've written 4 grants the last couple of months, which we haven't heard back from. Occasionally, the municipalities will give us a small, we just received something from the city of McAllen. We've also received, personal grants as well, or donations, I should say. But what we're really trying to do is we fundraise. We work really hard in our community. We do a spring and fall raffle that's very, very successful. And that's
what do you raffle?
Guns.
Oh, of course.
Handguns, rifles, and shotguns.
That'll do it in the Valley.
And in the Valley, it works great. An old 956, and we just get so many raves. And that is held at a local
like, for instance,
facility.
how much does it cost for a ticket, and what do you get when you win?
Oh, you get 14 tries, and you can choose. So every prize every person that's pulled gets to go back in the bucket for another try. So you can literally have 14 opportunities to win for $50. And we're talking, 9mm, we're talking handguns, shotguns, rifles, bow and arrows, licensed concealed carry courses.
So there's 14 prizes?
14 prizes.
And they're all roughly of equal value?
Oh no,
No?
there's some in the thousands, there's some $300-400, but you're getting a good portion there.
Yeah, raffles can work. I remember when I was at Pan Am years ago, we raised money by raffling a diamond ring. Were you there at that time?
I think I was. That was around Valentine's Day, right? Was
yeah,
it?
Yeah, we were trying to make it where, well, it could be either Valentine's or maybe engagement, because it was very nice. It was I think a 1.6 carat diamond, and it cost us, I believe, around $1,000. It cost us from the wholesaler.
Sure.
And we agreed that we would provide the setting for the person who won, because the idea was that it would be perhaps an engagement ring. And I forgot what we sold, $20 a ticket or something, but we made $1,000 on the thing, and it was real easy. It was a real easy sale, and the guy who won was delighted because for $20, he got his engagement ring.
He can get on his
a good
knee.
deal. So yes, raffles can be beautiful if properly managed. They can do very, very well. What is your favorite of the wildlife refuges?
I would have to say it would be Kita Mazatlan in McAllen.
Oh, yes, yeah. I don't think of that in that way because it's going to be 20 acres pretty soon, right? I know they've purchased
more, and they're really
it's got the beautiful gardens.
And they've conserved. And if you go out in the evening and take part in some of those concerts, so we're trying to do the best of both worlds by, again, providing the outdoor, but also bringing in musical festivals. They also had UTRGV recently who gave out free seeds for your garden, native specific plants and trees, which was really great. You could come out and make some wind chimes and, do some fun things, have yoga out in the park. So it's really about...
I've done book readings there twice.
Oh, it's beautiful.
For my books, and they had a nice turnout, usually about 40, 50 people. Beautiful evening, outdoors, great setting. And then I focused on the work that I've done on horny toads and what a lot of people around here, they call them, I'm thinking of buzzards, but they're not really buzzards. So turkey vultures. And anyway, I just talk about the wildlife, and so it's a beautiful setting for that.
Well, same thing here in Brownsville, with the parrots. I mean, there's only two places here in Brownsville has a different parrots in the McAllen area. And so some of the parks here in Brownsville that we visited with the parrots, the chichatas, people do not have those in other parts of the country. And they're only here for a short period of time. They'll be, opening up soon. Summer's on its way. And so growing up, hearing the chichatas here in the valley is just something that's very impressionable. You don't find that in other areas or cultures. So, I've traveled a lot of places. I've seen different things. I was in Africa, which is to me very similar to Texas. You've got the panhandle areas and the grasses. Of course, we don't have the lions, but Africa was quite an influential experience to me. And I know you've traveled there as well. So it's
interesting you say that, because when I went to the wildlife refuge Yankari, which is in the middle of Nigeria, I thought I was in the King Ranch. It looked just like the King Ranch.
That's exactly what I said.
Palm trees and everything.
Except there was a lion on top of my Jeep.
Well, you were, I suppose, in South Africa.
We were in South Africa, Johannesburg, Zimbabwe, a couple of other areas as well, during Ebola.
Oh, my.
It was quite an experience.
You had to go really have fun, didn't you?
Yes. Was looking at all the graphic pictures and wondering, why am I standing in this line? But it was fantastic.
Well, having been here in the valley all of your life, and seen the enormous changes that we've had. We're going from a rural to an urban setting, no matter what. We can try to preserve green areas, and I hope we do, but it's just going to go increasingly urban, I'm afraid. So, if I gave you $50 million and said, "Okay, do whatever you want to make this a better place," what would you do with your $50 million?
It's a great question. I would definitely invest that money into.
You would buy land, wouldn't you?
I would buy land. I would buy land for a sanctuary.
And then flip it.
No. I would absolutely, I would solve the problem that we have with our animal population, and I would also preserve. I would want people to be able to experience some of the old town sorts of things that we've had, that Brownsville's been working on doing, like downtown area preservation. I would want to bring that full circle to where you could have events there, but also see what it was like back in time, because it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing, you go to some of these areas like Branson or some of these other areas where they have these plays. Brownsville has a great example of the Confederate Army where they do the reenactment. Those kinds of things I think are important, but I would love to do those on a bigger scale. But really my number 1 and 2 would be preservation and working with the animals to have a big sanctuary to where you could resolve this issue. It's a lot of money that would do a lot of good here in our valley.
I think it's a great idea. Where would you put it?
I would probably have to look at an area maybe toward the east side because that land is available. But I would also have to do a lot of research on that. I haven't thought about having $50 million.
Yeah.
I tell you, if I did, I'd do a definite, study on that for sure. But I would say maybe towards the lower valley and somewhere out east, because that land would be available, and you could bring in reenactments from the Delta orchards of the 1930s to the sherries from the 1930s. You could also bring in, the Balli heritage, from the island, Padre Balli, you could bring in that. But also when we're working and looking on our day trippers page, we've gone all the way to Laredo, because that's a day trip, but we try not to go too far out because you want to get back, right? But we have focused Salineño, San Ignacio, all of those areas west, and then everywhere in between, all the way out to the island, which we think is important. So I would want to bring a little bit of all the corners of the valley to that place. Not an amusement type of thing, but more of a cultural center like none other that we have here in the valley.
One of the places that I think is that a lot of people haven't visited because it's so remote, but it's got its own unique magic, I would say, is the Port Mansfield Cut. Because you don't have to have a boat, you can drive up there. And it's cool if you go on a boat too. Going up the Arroyo, that's a nice way to do it. But to go up to the Cut, because there's only like 5 people up there, almost
and
at any
you gotta
time.
have a 4-wheel drive.
And
Sometimes.
it's very helpful.
Sure is.
It's smart to have a 4-wheel drive. You can do it without it, but it's wise to have a 4-wheel drive. As you go up there, it's roughly 25 miles up the island. And, you have your second jetties there and good fishing. I've been out there often in January. I like January because you have warm sun but cool air. And so that's one of my places that I always suggest people should go as part of their Valley bucket list.
Absolutely. That is beautiful.
And now you've given me one that I didn't know. I got to go see Monty.
You need to go see Monty. But you're right, the land cut and all of the island, we haven't even mentioned that. There's just so much here, rich in land, rich in culture, rich in history that we haven't spoken about.
Well, Edward Abbey, who wrote Desert Solitaire, he was kind of the Thoreau of the West, they called him. And he's famous for saying, progress for the sake of progress is the ideology of the cancer cell. Because he was out there in Tucson and Phoenix, and he saw, just this incredible, shall we say, insane development with no rationality behind it except money. We need to develop this so we can make money. And he worked as a park ranger in the Canyonlands, the Grand Canyon around there, and he got so frustrated because people would come to this beautiful Canyonland, and they wouldn't get out of their cars. He said they just come and they could drive up, and they'll step out of their car, take a picture, get back in the car, and drive off. They came 4,000 miles from New York to the Grand Canyon, and they spend 10 minutes, and they don't walk hardly anywhere. They just get out of the car and look. And he said, I just wanted to get a giant can opener and pry them out of their cars. And I feel that way sometimes here because we have a beautiful valley where people just stay in their houses and they don't go anywhere. And they don't experience the vibrant beauty that's out there. Now, we do have a brutal climate sometimes, and so summer's perhaps not the time. That's why I said I go, January I love, and October's a beautiful month often. And if you want to go out to the Salt Lake, it's probably best that you do that in the cooler months, obviously, right?
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you'll be passing out there. And after it rains, it looks like a giant mirror.
Well,
reflects everything.
I've been caught in that rain.
Have
And
you?
Yes, you get torrential floods and very quick. And we were out there one day with our dogs, and so those flash floods come up very quickly. And if you're not prepared for that, so always
you got
heed
really
caution.
muddy, huh?
Very muddy, and I had to pick up my dogs and they're small. They were small dogs.
Did you have to walk a long way to get there, or could you drive most of the way?
No, you have to walk. So there are just little areas where you can park your vehicle, and you go through the gate, and then you hike it in. Some of those hikes are longer. You've got maybe a half mile on one, and then there's another one that's almost 3 miles. Just depends on which lake you're looking at. And there's some areas where you can do, not necessarily there, but there are a few areas in the valley. That's another thing we need is overnight camping that we don't have that. And so those are some things, some experiences that I would like to see come around.
And we've done a good job with bike trails.
Yes,
hiking bike trails in McAllen and Brownsville has
the Cara.
I think what do we have? Maybe 50 miles of hiking bike trails here.
The Cara is supposed to bring 428 miles,
What?
bridging Arroyo with Harlingen to Brownsville. It's not completed, but that's the vision of those cities.
I don't even know about
the
that.
Cara Trail. Yes, they're working on that
And
now.
it's Harlingen and Brownsville?
The Arroyo, Harlingen, downtown, bringing all of that across and around.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know about
428
that.
miles.
Oh, awesome. When I used to live, I spent a couple of years in Oregon, and I was just blown away. Back then, this is, how long ago? But anyway, 35, 40 years ago. And they had, I was in Corvallis, Salem was 30 miles away. They had a bike trail that went from there to there, and it was off of the road. It was like ours here, an asphalt trail that was a good 50 yards off of the highway, and it was its own passageway. It went through forests, and you were close to the highway, but no one's going to run into you. And it went 30 miles. I couldn't believe it. I never even thought of such a thing then. So I thought it was brilliant when they were able to take the old railroad tracks and convert them. And I'm very excited about what you're describing, because that'll be 400 miles, my goodness.
Of course, it's not completed, but that's the vision between the cities. That they've started that already, and I know that FAR is on board. FAR has done quite a few bike trails. Brownsville does have some.
So you're talking about connecting the cities from McAllen down here with bike trails?
Well, this one is just Cameron County, that area that I'm talking about. Of course,
I'm just trying to imagine 400 miles. I was going to say 40, but
it goes
400
all the way to
is.
Brownsville. It goes all the way back around
I guess
the
big
island.
loops and
Boca
things.
Chica.
Yeah, okay. So it goes to the island. Okay, I got you. I've always thought it'd be kind of cool to have an Ironman from the island, where the Ironman always starts with a swim, so they could swim across the bay, and then get bikes and go to Harlingen and then run to McAllen, something like that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Why don't you organize it? You're good at that sort of thing.
I've done the bike ride over the causeway a few times, and boy, that's really challenging when the wind's up.
Oh,
I've
can
done
imagine.
the Jalapeno 100, and I've actually biked all the way from Edinburgh to San Antonio. It's called the San Antonio 250.
In one day?
No, it's a couple of days, and you start out in Edinburgh early morning, and you bike all the way to San Antonio. It takes 2 days, and you're booking it.
Wow.
I did it a couple of summer goes in July.
You are
That's
hardcore.
for spina bifida. It's called the SB 250. It's for spina bifida. It's a fundraiser.
Wow, you must have been sore for a month.
Really, what's hard on is your hands. It's hard on your hands.
Oh, yes, because it gets the bar.
vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And the road is about 120 plus, and the asphalt's popping, just like the little bubble wrap.
You did it in the summer?
Mm-hmm. That's when they do it. They actually do it in June or July. I think we were in June, actually. I said July, but I think it was June. And they do that on purpose because they say that they want you to, the challenge with spina bifida, it's so difficult, and boy, do you feel challenged. You have to qualify for that.
I interviewed Scott Jurek, who is a super marathoner. He runs 100-mile marathons. And he told me that he once ran 165 miles in 24 hours. And I thought, he ran from here to San Antonio.
Can you
in
imagine?
24 hours. He ran.
Yeah, nonstop.
Kind of like that. Well, not quite that far, but pretty close. He ran from Falfurrias to San Antonio in one day. In that 24-hour period. That is insane.
That's tough on your body, that's for sure.
And he said something always stuck with me. It said that, it isn't about, because I said, how do you get your body to do that? He said, no, how do you get your mind to do that? He said, it's your mind that's the secret. And it's also, your Achilles heel. Because if doubt creeps into your mind, then you won't make it.
You're done.
So, yeah. Well, thank you, Dendea, for coming in. I appreciate you giving us the valley-wide perspective. Usually we're looking at kind of myopically at Brownsville or South Padre and that sort of thing. But you have this, and I knew you would because of your organization. And you all are all over the valley looking for the hidden jewels that we should all see. So thank you. And so if we want to visit your Facebook page, it's called Day Trippers, or what's the name?
RGV Day Trippers.
RGV Day Trippers.
We would love for the community to share more of what they do, because it's one thing for us to post, but we love, your opinion and also what you'd like to see. But when they're out on the road or seeing something, please post those pictures and share. It helps to collectively kind of find out where these sweet spots are, these hidden gems are.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Maybe
Appreciate you coming in.
Maybe you can help me write a book about that sometime.
Maybe I can. Maybe I can do that.
Thanks for watching this BSPA video. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you like what you see. And if you really like what you see, go ahead and go to our website, brosoperformingarts.org, and smash the donate button. And then we'll really like you too.